willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Senator Langford.
Dan, it's absolutely great to see you again. And I'm sure you're enjoying being on that side of the desk because you can't get up and leave when you need to or be able to come in and out or take a quick phone call. You're stuck.
Yes.
Right there. So, but it really is great to see you.
Thank you.
I do want to follow up on a conversation that Senator King had with you. And I would say I have the same line of questioning for you that I just want to be able to close the loop on. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Thank you.
And that is to your credit, not only to your faith and your family, but the people you've served for a long time. But I really want the DNI to be able to be tough when it requires to be tough and to be clear when there's time to be clear, because the policymakers around you need clarity, need straightforward facts, need the facts that they know that they can trust. And we'll deal with nice in the hallway when we grab a bottle of water together and get a chance to chit-chat. But I need to hear clarification from you again that when the moment comes and it's crunch time, you can be as tough as you need to be.
James, I think that's Senator, I'm sorry.
James is always good.
You said such nice things about me. I just fell into our friendship trap here. Senator, I absolutely understand that this role demands someone who can stand up to the pressures that will be placed upon him, political pressures. We have 17 agencies. It's not everybody's going to agree in terms of the way to go forward, and there needs to be a director who can assert that authority. I've been blessed to have Maria Scott, who backs me up with good, wise counsel. But I recognize the need for that, given the situation that we are facing worldwide in terms of these threats. We don't have time for just to be the nice guy. We've got to go after it.
Yeah, I've often said to people in my state that challenge me for being too nice at times to say I can say no with a smile still, but still be able to stand by it. I know you can as well, but that'll be an area you're pushed on. But I would also say to you that some of the pressure won't just be from the policymakers around you. There is a tendency with all of us in the political world, as well as with the intelligence community, to somewhat chase the priorities of the headline of the latest news story. And that becomes the IC priority. For many in the IC community, they saw the cyber issue a long time ago. The media is only recently catching up to the real threats that we face on cyber. And so one of the things that we will need from you in the days ahead is to keep the agencies on focus to where the real threats are, not just where the headlines are. And a good for instance of this is it's amazing to me how little we talk about narco-terrorism anymore, and we have tens of thousands of people that die through either the trafficking of individuals, of drugs, or from overdoses as a result of that, that are Americans dying all the time. And it's one of the constant threats that we have, but the news doesn't talk about it much anymore, and so it somewhat drifts to the background. You have the responsibility to be able to make sure it doesn't drift to the background among our intelligence community, that we stay on focus on the threats that we face all the time, and that when the issues come up, we're on top of them. Let me ask you a strange question for us. When we get a chance to visit together, will we still be able to talk about the Coates Waste of the Week? Will you still be focused in on, I found an area that we need to resolve? You know as well as all of us do on this dais that at times working with the administration, if there are things that need to be fixed, there's some other entity that sees it, but the practitioners in the agency actually see the problem. We need help in the oversight part of it, that when you see something in any of the 17 entities or your own office, can you help us be able to see some of those things as well to be able to know what to fix legislatively?
Yes, I intend to do that. I went with some passion every week to the Senate floor 55 times to address a certified waste of the week. And I've already looked around a little bit and said, maybe that fits a waste of the week category. Let's investigate that. Obviously, I have to be confirmed before I can start that process, but I'm committed to doing that. And I want to just reflect basically on what you said about the narco-terrorism. You and I have talked about this personally. I think each of us have experienced talking to families who tragically have lost a member of that family because of maybe the 17-year-old going to a party and somebody says, here, try this, and they end up in the hospital and many of them perish. It is scourge that is cutting across every part of our country. We have it in Indiana, you have it in your state, and every one of our members has it. And it is something that can't be ignored or pushed aside. It is undermining the very essence of this country, and it's affecting families and communities in ways that haven't made the headlines as much as they should. But it has to be a component of this, and intelligence does play a role in terms of how these things are brought into our country or within our country manufactured.
That's great. Thanks, Dan.
Senator Harris.
Senator Coates, I enjoyed our time together, and thank you for that.
Thank you. I did also.
So I know that many of my colleagues have raised the issue of the restructuring of the National Security Council. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more because I'm sure you agree it's critically important as it relates to what we need to accomplish in terms of national security. So as has been mentioned, the President's executive order was issued on January 28th, which basically put the Director of National Intelligence in a place where he or you, if confirmed, would not be included necessarily in the National Security Council meetings and the Principals Committee meetings. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, do you believe that it's critically important that you have a permanent role in those meetings?
Yes.
And have you requested of the President or any member of his administration that executive order be modified?
We have sent them information as to how to modify it. It has not been addressed yet, but I have been reassured over and over and over by the President and his staff that absolutely that's what their intent was, and they expect me to be there.
Have they given you a date of when it will be modified? Is it going to happen before your confirmation?
They have not given me a date, and I can't answer. I mean, I do not know of a particular date.
Now, my understanding is that the CIA director the executive order was modified on January 30th.
Correct.
And it was modified to include the CIA director. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that the executive order was basically something from the Bush era that had been resuscitated, but it has been modified since it was issued. You've agreed to that, is that correct?
I think it was the 30th. I need to.
Well, it's been modified since it was issued under this administration.
No, it has not been modified.
So when was the CIA director added to it?
That was part of the original.
No, it wasn't.
It was a press conference statement.
It was okay. It was a press conference statement. It was not an action that was taken.
Okay, because I have a copy of that here, and that it was added back to the National Security Council. So the point is that this Bush-era document has been modified since it was issued to include the CIA director, but it did not put back in NDI.
I may be wrong in saying it was a Bush era.
You indicated that that's what the administration told you.
I said my understanding was that language was taken from a similar executive order issued under the Bush administration, and that order was issued before there was this position of DNI. And I have been told verbally that the intent was not to leave the DNI's position off, just that apparently someone drafting that language didn't realize that that language didn't include the DI because there was no DI at that particular point in time. But the bottom line is that I have full 100% confidence that I will be part of the Principals Committee. Yes,
well, my concern is not about, on this point, not about your qualifications. Mm-hmm. My concern is about what environment you're walking into.
Okay.
And in particular, whether, if confirmed, you will actually have a seat in that body. And if the administration is telling you that it was some document that was issued at a time gone by, we know that it has since been modified to include the CIA. It did not include the Joint Chiefs. And it has not replaced the position for which you are here testifying. So my concern is that there has been no indication or assurance given that you will, if confirmed, actually be a member of that body. And I'd like to know from you, if that does not happen, are you prepared to still assume the responsibilities without the authority that you would have if you were a member of that body?
I'm fully prepared to assume the responsibilities.
even if you are not, even if the executive order is not modified?
Yes, I am. I've been assured that I have the authority to be a member of that committee and be at that committee in every one of its meetings.
Wouldn't you agree the assurance would be sealed if the executive order is modified to indicate that the position that you now seek is actually entitled to be a part of all meetings that relate to national security?
Well, as I've indicated before, I'm going to take that message to the administration that the question was raised here. I'm perfectly comfortable with it because I trust them and I believe what they have told me, and I intend to do this. But
I would be concerned, sir.
I would like to get back.
Because
I would like to get back to you with an
that
answer.
this came from the Bush era, and we know that there have been modifications since. I would be concerned, but I appreciate your service and your candor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dan, for once again answering the call of service.
Thank you.
Marcia, for once again standing beside Dan as he answers the call of service. It's good to see you back here, and I congratulate you on your nomination. We've spoken some about the unique challenges and opportunities of trying to integrate all 17 agencies within the intelligence community that you'll face as the DNI. You're obviously very familiar with them. You're familiar with the kind of intelligence products they each produce and the priorities that they each have. Have you any thoughts on what actions can be taken in the very short run to make that process work more efficiently and to produce a coherent picture for policymakers of what's happening in the world overseas in your role as DNI?
Obviously, there's a lot that I need to learn. I want to get acquainted with the various leaders of the agencies. But as I have said before, given the nature of the threats that we face, we need to act sooner rather than later. I've always believed that getting the right people in place is what can best execute the doctrine in terms of achieving the goals that you want to achieve. And so we will quickly, if confirmed, move into that mode of filling that up. I did recognize earlier on the previous leaders of the ODNI and the smooth transition that they have arranged by ensuring that there's continuity during this gap period of time. But this is one of the this rises to an early responsibility.
One of the original purposes of the ODNI was to take the disparate kinds of intelligence that is collected by our intelligence agency, be it human intelligence, bank records, satellite imagery, email and telephone intercepts, passenger manifest, and synthesize them all together to create a coherent picture. I think that's an important function, and it still can play that function in part today. One thing I've heard on occasion from my visits to the various agencies and talking with their frontline personnel is that the DNI over time has imposed bureaucratic mandates on the agencies, reporting requirements, HR requirements, and so forth, that get their core collectors or their analysts out of the business of core collection and analyzing and spend too much of their time focused on fulfilling those bureaucratic mandates. Have you seen that in your preparation, and do you have any thoughts about how you might focus the DNI on that original mission and keep the constituent agencies of the IC focused on their original mission?
Well, I haven't had enough experience to evaluate that. I will certainly take that as a issue to address. But without the confirmation, I haven't had the opportunity to engage with the other 16 agencies, except to begin to formulate some relationships with a few of them, starting with the Director of Central Intelligence. We've had a number of occasions to just talk to each other and share what we think the concerns are and what we think we need to do. I think that relationship is a very important relationship, maybe the first important relationship. So we're already working to establish that.
Thank you. Finally, you mentioned the Rob Silberman Commission in your opening statement. That was a commission of expert tasked to recommend ways to ensure that the intelligence community, quote, is sufficiently authorized, organized, equipped, trained, and resourced, end quote. What kind of lessons, if any, would you take away from the reports of the Rob Silberman Commission, and how applicable are those today, recognizing that we're about a decade on?
Well, not all of those recommendations were implemented. I think it's worth going back and looking at the original intent, and then the reports from Rob Silberman, and they made a number of recommendations which were constructive. But I just think after 12 years or so, the agency clearly has evolved into what it is today. But taking a look back at where it was intended in the first place to go, and as I said, this was a compromise piece of legislation, like most legislation, and it was interesting that in the articles I was reading, they talked to the former directors and a total of 8 people who were in a position to make an assessment as to what exactly the authorities of the DNI were, and there were 8 different answers. And so I think that alone is a signal that we ought to perhaps go back and look and see if we want to make some adjustments to the law. Now, that would have to be done in conjunction with the Congress, of course. But at some point, I think maybe sooner rather than later, that would be something we ought to look at.
Thank you, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Senator Cornyn.
Senator Coates, congratulations. Thank you for answering the call to duty once more, and particularly to your wife, Marcia, who's always supported you through all your public service. This is a great continuing contribution, and I would expect nothing less from you. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask about 2 subjects. One, basically to ask for your help as in your new job once confirmed. I've become concerned that the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which originally passed back in 1938, needs to be updated. And for example, we experienced during the time that Congress passed a bill called the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, that once Congress voted unanimously to pass that, the President vetoed it, Congress overrode his veto, that a foreign government spent untold amount of money to try to lobby the United States Congress. And it troubled me because I'm not sure many people knew what the source of the funds or the source of the lobbying effort was. And it just strikes me as really important, particularly in light of the Russian activities that are going to be the subject of investigation here, that we look at the Foreign Agent Registration Act to see if it needs to be updated so that Congress and the public can see where money is coming from by foreign countries, perhaps hiring lobbyists on K Street to try to influence domestic legislation. So I'd like to ask for your help and your office's help to work on that.
Well, you have that. I want to do that. I think more transparency needs to be offered to the public relative to what this is and what this isn't.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go back to a comment that was made by one of our colleagues, my friend from Oregon, who's asked you to and others to produce the numbers of innocent Americans swept up in intelligence gathering operations. And I just want you to talk, if you will, briefly about all the various minimization procedures to suppress incidental or inadvertent communications. First of all, it is illegal to target an American citizen, correct?
That is correct.
Without a search warrant.
That is correct.
So what we're talking about primarily is targeting foreign intelligence persons overseas.
702 is specifically designed for that purpose.
And by the way, I was the director of the FBI as recently as yesterday in my presence referred to 702 as the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Would you agree with that characterization?
I would in the intelligence community also sees it that way, the entire community.
So we all saw what happened during the course of the debate over the USA Freedom Act, which ultimately I voted for. But I'm concerned that we not let the debate on the reauthorization of Section 702 get caught up in that same sort of hysteria, where some people were worried that their own government was spying on them, when that decidedly was untrue. But that's history. But I want to make sure, given the importance of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to our intelligence community, that we make sure that we do everything possible, first to educate everyone so they understand what is authorized and what is not authorized, and then to work with the Congress to come up with an orderly way to make sure that these crown jewels of the intelligence community, this Section 702, is authorized. I want people to understand that people aren't targeted, even foreign agents overseas, without court approval. And there is judicial review from time to time. There is oversight and review within the executive branch, and heaven knows there's a lot of oversight here in the Congress over this, as well as in the various intelligence agencies themselves. There's layers of protection to make sure that no American has to worry about their own government spying on them. In fact, every conceivable effort is being made to prevent that and to protect the privacy rights of Americans, which we all agree is important. So I would just ask for your continued help. Obviously, you know a lot about the topic, but given the particular importance of the reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that we work together early to try to educate people, to try to better inform everybody involved, so that they can be reassured that the proper balance between privacy rights, which we all agree are important, but national security, that exactly the right balance is struck.
Well, Senator, I couldn't agree with you more. My colleagues have heard me talk when I was a member of the committee about finding that balance. I think from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, we all are on the same page that we cherish our private rights in this country. They're constitutionally provided to us. We want to do everything we can to make sure those private rights are secure. But we also know that the Constitution requires us to provide for the common defense. And we are under attack from a number of sources now, that whether it's through cyber or whether it's through any of a number of other ways, the United States is vulnerable to attack, and they want us to do everything we can to keep them safe. And so finding that balance so that we don't take away private rights and at the same time use the necessary tools to determine what the bad guys are trying to do, that's important that we find that balance point so we can accomplish both of those. 702 is designed to go after foreign bad guys. It's lawful collection. In that process, there's some incidental, what is called incidental names of Americans, potential names of Americans. Some bad guy might have on his laptop the names of 40 Americans. And so if he's targeted for something, all of a sudden 40 American names. Now, we put a process in place in devising this law that there's a minimization of this. And I won't go into all the details of minimization because I can't explain it as well as others can. But it is a process that understands that we're not targeting these people. But incidentally, they came up because they were on this guy's email. Or on his phone list. The level of oversight here is all three branches of government, and it's significant to try to secure those privacies. There's a query practice, and that is, but all these are authorized. All these are under court review and oversight review, and so this is such a critical tool. I think it deserves full transparency to the level that we can, while still protecting sources and classified information and methods and classified information. We need to ensure that the public is not led into a situation where they think they're, in deference to my colleague from Oregon, sweeping up, collecting information about them. We're trying to sort it out so that we can find out if that bad guy in Syria or wherever is talking to someone in the United States. We kind of want to know what they're talking about. And so, and there are processes there that protect rights and sort that down.
And there's procedures to go to court if there is an
There are
American
procedures to go to court.
Content needs to be secured, and you have to show probable cause, and the court has to issue a
All of that.
warrant.
All of that. I worried when I went back home on the issue of bulk collection and metadata. Now, that's been resolved. 215 of the Patriot Act has been involved. We don't do that anymore. But I was constantly asked by people back at home, what about this megadata? And I said, no, it's not megadata, it's metadata. No, it's megadata. They're collecting everything on us. They're listening to all our calls. I asked then Keith Alexander, who was head of the NSA. He said, well, if we were listening to everybody's calls, we'd have to hire 330 million people to work 24 hours a day. So it's impossible. We're just trying to sort out the bad guys from the good guys. Now, that is the discussion that we don't have to have. It's done. It's the law. We're following the law. We have a new system now. And it'd be up to policymakers if they want to make any adjustments to that. But the 702 is such a valuable tool regarding what foreign bad people are trying to do to Americans that I think that the intelligence community feels very strongly about it. It's your decision. We need to provide you with the information that you need in order to make decisions as to how to go forward with this program. I'm sorry I got into a sermon mode there, and it's a little bit over the top. I used up your time.
Your wife was giving you this. I just want you to know that.
That wouldn't be the first time, Richard.
Senator Wyden has asked for one additional question. There are other members who seek additional questions. Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we do need to clarify this 702 issue because it is critical of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Let's stipulate that I and every member of the Senate wants to go after the foreign threats, or as you correctly call them, foreign bad guys. No question about it. What has happened, because communications have gotten so sophisticated and globally integrated, an indeterminate number of innocent Americans have their communications being collected under Section 702, and the government can then conduct searches for their communications without a court order or even a particular suspicion. Now, to just step back from our two-part question, I asked you if you would get the public the number of how many innocent law-abiding Americans are being swept under FISA's 702 collection. You said yes, and then you went on to say it was hard. So my two-part question is the answer still yes? You will get us the number. And since we have been trying to get this for years and years, I mean, literally, as you know from being on the committee, will you commit now to getting us a report every 30 days until we get this number? We need it for reauthorization. And it goes right to the heart, frankly, of how you do the balance you're talking about. Foreign bad guys, absolutely. But an indeterminate number of people are being swept up because global communications are now so sophisticated. So, two-part question. Will you stay with your earlier answer and say you will get us the number of innocent Americans who are swept up before reauthorization? That is a yes or no, and before you answered yes. Is the answer still yes? It's a yes or no.
Senator, I can't answer that with yes or no because I qualified my yes with you, and that was my intent. And let me just explain. I qualified it because I said it has been extremely hard to come up with that number for various reasons, which I don't fully understand. I said I wanted to talk to Director Rogers, and I wanted to talk to NSA in terms of what's the problem here? Why can't we? Okay. And what is
since my question,
what is the right definition in terms of swept up, and the numbers? So basically, I said what I hope that I said, and I want to clarify the record for this, is that I will do my best to work to try to find out if we can get that number, but I need first to find out about why we can't get it. I don't think anybody's trying to withhold it.
Let's go to my second part. will you commit now to getting us a response every 30 days until we get this question answered? Because this has gone on literally, and I say this to my friend, this has gone on for years, and it has been sort of one reason after another, and these are law-abiding Americans. So will you report to us every 30 days till we get this answered? That's a yes or no.
Well, I don't see that as a yes or no either until I get the answer in terms of whether that's even possible to, I can call up Admiral Rogers once every 30 days and say, where are we? But I would like to first understand why it is, what the issue is here in terms of getting that exact number. I don't want to come up with a number that once again tells the American people something that
nobody's ever come up with a number here. We've had years of stalling on this. This is a legitimate question. You're a friend. I need to know the answer. I need to know the answers to those questions before we have a vote in here, because this is central to your key priority, which is reauthorizing 702. You've got me at hello on going after the foreign threats, but I'm not there with respect to these answers on innocent Americans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter to the committee, Senator Warner and myself, from the Electronic Privacy Information Center without objection, so ordered. Dan, one last question. Just to make it clear, the executive order, which was National Security Presidential Memorandum Number 2, has not been amended since it was issued, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
There was a question that it wasn't clear in my mind exactly how it was answered, and I just wanted to make sure that we cleared the record.
I'm glad you made that clarification. Yes.
At this time, the open hearing will adjourn, and we will reconvene in a closed hearing upstairs.
All right, folks, so we will start our coverage in roughly 4 hours for President Trump's address to Congress. Again, the link is in the description below, so make sure you can go and give it a thumbs up, set the notification, and we'll start our coverage at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, so that's in roughly 4 hours. We hope to see you guys here, and it's going to be an awesome event. I hope to see you guys on the chat. And we'll be uploading a video soon, so make sure to stay tuned before we start streaming for the event. So we hope to see you guys here. Like I said, make sure you share that link with anybody and everybody you know. Let them know that President Trump is set to unveil a few new rules, a few things that he wants to say that he's been keeping under wraps for a while. So it's going to be a really nice event. It's going to be very eye-opening, so don't miss it. Thank you very much, everyone. See you guys soon. Thank you for the support, and we can't wait, so we'll see you then.